signing of the National Health Insurance Bill into law by President Cyril Ramaphosa. The Council, as the regulator, has however urged medical aid schemes and members not to panic or cause widespread speculation. The key objective of the NHI is to provide universal access to quality health care for all South Africans, as enshrined in the Constitution. The Council says it acknowledges the various debates, objections and threats of legal action against this legislation. Spokesperson for the Council for Medical Schemes is Stephen Monamodi.
The CMS understands that the National Health Insurance Act takes effect on a date fixed by the President by proclamation in the Government Gazette. Importantly, Section 57 of the Act states that the NHI will be gradually phased in using a progressive and pragmatic approach based on financial resource availability. It is against this background that the CMS confirms that the Medical Scheme Act and its regulation still applies, and we call upon all members of medical aids not to abandon or cancel their membership.
8 Nigerian nationals accused of public violence are expected to appear in the Kimberley Magistrates Court today for bail application judgment. The suspects face charges of public violence and malicious damage of property and are now also facing another charge of violating the Immigration Act. Umpemetsi Balatsing reports.
Last month, during an arrest of a Nigerian national allegedly in possession of drugs, a group of Nigerian nationals allegedly attacked the police, leading to the firing of rubber bullets. One suspect faces charges of drug possession, 3 of public violence, and 4 others for damaging police property.
Israel has complained that the UN stop court is being exploited by South Africa, which has called for an order to halt the Israeli offensive in Rafah. The Israeli Foreign Ministry said South Africa presented biased and false claims that relied on Hamas sources. Israel's legal team will present its case to the International Court of Justice today. And the United Nations Humanitarian Aid Chief has defended the organization's use of casualty figures during the war in Gaza in response to outspoken criticism by Israel. Martin Griffith said the UN was very cautious in its approach and accused Israel of blaming the messenger. The Israeli foreign minister said the reduction in the UN estimates of the number of women and children killed in Gaza suggested it had relied on false data from a terrorist organization. Griffith says the accusations was counterproductive.
I don't think it's helpful to us to characterize the world's legitimate body for peace and security as a collaborator with terrorism. So I don't find this any in the sense of helpful diplomacy. We have our views, as do they, about the conduct of the war, but there will come a time when we'll all need to provide a future for the people of Gaza.
Recapping the top story, Parliament has passed the proposed law to officially end Eskom's 100-year electricity monopoly. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.7 FM in Cape Town. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
It's 8 after 10 o'clock. Welcome to the second hour of the show. You're listening to The Talking Point. Coming up in the second hour of the show, we're going to be talking about Ubuntu and how we rekindle the values and the principles of Ubuntu as a society. And I guess, after that open line, we need a lot of Ubuntu to go around. We need a whole lot of Ubuntu so that these type of behaviors can just come to an end. But, are we too late? Are we too late for that? Is the level of just criminality and moral degeneration, is it just beyond redemption right now? yeah, I mean, I cannot express the extent to which I'm still dumbfounded by the experiences that have been shared by some of our listeners this morning. I'm still very much speechless. So if I'm not saying anything really coherent on it, it's because I'm still trying to take it all in, really. Okay, so we're going to take a couple of your WhatsApp voice notes and then we'll get into our 10 o'clock conversation for the day.
Morning, Cathy. This scamming, it doesn't just happen to only women. Even men, they get scammed, by the way, because they imagine themselves doubling or tripling their monies. They are told to invest, say, 50,000 rand, and you will get home with the 250,000. And in some cases, these beliefs that the ancestors are talking, they must bring so much money and then they will in return get some more money. Well, it depends on the person, Cathy. Sometimes you just wonder how people think. Thank you. I'm calling from Butterworth.
Good morning. I'm just hearing about the sad story about the lady who was scammed. Myself, I was in the kind of situation as well, but it wasn't a lot of money. It was about 40K. These guys, it will be a group that is well organized, and yeah, because in my case, I was able to trust them, and one of the guys was also a guy very close to me. And then it was a group of people, and in South Africans and non-South Africans, and the guys were based in Delft, in Cape Town. So it's unfortunate, but I think they also use some kind of spiritual powers that, when the time comes, whatever they say to you, you listen. You can't just say no. Yeah, that's life. We just have to be careful. It's really.
Good morning, Cathy. I must say my heart goes out to all these people that have been scammed, but this is what the two-pot pension thing will actually prevent, that people can't resign from their jobs and draw out all their pension and give it away to someone who thinks that they're going to start a business for them, and then eventually they lose their money. This is where you now have your money protected, and you can't just do what you want to with the money, because it's the money for your future pension. It's actually a great decision. But once again, condolences to all those people. You've worked so long and so hard, and to just give away your money, not a good idea.
Hi, Ausketli. It's Elton here from Boxbeck. These things, they are indeed happening. And it's not only women, South African women, that are getting affected. Even us, also foreign nationals, we also get robbed by South African women. I am a good example of those guys. I got married to a South African woman in 2012. 2013, 2014, she disappeared. The other day I came back from work, everything in the house was gone. I could not even see where she is. She got elsewhere to stay. You understand? So this is a problem that is happening, not only foreign nationals, but even South African women that are doing these things also.
Hi, Cathy and your team. I'd like to remain anonymous as well. I work for a big pension fund here in South Africa, and we do advise our members and pensioners about these scammers, especially the foreigners, because some of them, they marry some of the people, especially people from government. They marry them and then they divorce them after 6 months, and they also use the pension as part of the claim when they divorce them. So we do have campaigns that we do at the moment, where we do road shows in different areas and presentations, so that we alert people about these scammers. So yeah, it's important that we spread the word as much as we can. Thank you, Cathy.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Clearly, this is something that we need to be more awake to, and need to be part of those that are intentionally raising awareness and intentionally educating the public about these scams that are going around. Thank you all really for your contributions and also for the vulnerability to share your experiences, even though some of them have not been great experiences. But I appreciate the fact that you've trusted us with your stories this morning. All right, let's move on to our second conversation of the day. We're talking about the principles of Ubuntu and restoring Ubuntu in our country. Where and what would the late Emeritus Archbishop Desmond Tutu have to say about what we see happening, whether it is the social ills in our communities, the values of compassion, the values of honesty, the values of responsibility. All of those are values of Ubuntu, and he was a great champion of Ubuntu. What would he say today about some of the things that we are allowing to happen in our communities? And we talk about the humanity, right? Where is the humanity that we need to be showing towards each other and others? I'm going to begin this conversation by playing that clip of the late Emeritus Archbishop.
We have something in our African community, something that is very difficult to put into English. It is called Ubuntu. Ubuntu. Ubuntu is the essence of being human. And it says a solitary human being is a contradiction in terms. I can't be a human being on my lonesome. I wouldn't know how to speak as a human being. I wouldn't know how to think as a human being. I wouldn't know how to walk as a human being. I have to learn from other human beings how to be human. And so Ubuntu says, my humanity is bound up in yours. I am only because you are. And we then say, a person is a person through other persons. And that we need this communal harmony if we are going to survive at all. And anger and revenge and bitterness are corrosive of this harmony. You know it. You've experienced how when you are really angry with someone, it does something to your tum-tum. It does something to your blood pressure. So forgiving is actually not being altruistic. You're not being nice to the other guy. When you forgive, you're actually being nice to yourself. Forgiving, apart from anything else, is good for your health.
Oh man, I mean, just how can you not miss that voice, right? So that was Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu speaking about the principles of Ubuntu. And he's right when he says that often it is a term that can be very difficult to translate. But he did it so well in that particular clip. Let me welcome onto the show Reverend Joseph Tawane. He's the author of a book titled The Rainbow Nation, The Vision of the Beloved South African Community, and it's largely based on Tutu's legacy. Reverend Tawane, good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning, my sister Cathy. How are you this morning?
I'm well, thank you, Reverend. Later on in the show, we'll also be joined by Seth Mazibuko, who's the COO of the Moral Regeneration Movement. So, Reverend, let me kick it off with you. These ideas and principles of Ubuntu have been a way of life for African societies and communities for so long. and they predate the colonial period, right? This idea of having communal living, sharing amongst communities, mutual respect amongst communities. What has happened to Ubuntu today? Can we say that we still have Ubuntu?
We still have Ubuntu. It's living in our heart and mind, but we are having challenges and problems to practice there. And I think this is the reason why we need to go back to where we come from. Just forgive me for using the Bible at this time. There is a verse in Isaiah 51. It says, "Look to the rock from which you have been hewn." And we need to go back to exactly where we come from. And you need to understand that people like Desmond Tutu, Steve Biko, Mandela, and many others are the kind of resource, human resource, legacy that we need to relate back to. And I'm glad you played that clip. It surely demonstrates the kind of heresy, the kind of legacy and history that we come from. So I will say to your question, the Ubuntu philosophy, the Ubuntu is still part of us, but we need to go back to it and practicalize it so that we can become a community that is inclusive and a caring community.
Reverend, in your view, what is it that has shaped our society into being mostly societies that are centered around self as in the individual, around, individual interests, the interests of those closest to the individual, versus saying that, yes, my interests as an individual matter, but equally important would also be the interests of those around me?
Yeah. Perhaps let me start answering that, responding to what you said by saying that according to Steve Biko, the problem of the African people started when their culture collided with the dominant Western culture. At that point, African culture sustained severe blows that have battered and twisted nearly out of shape the African spirit of Ubuntu. For Biko, this is where Africa began to lose its grip and themselves and their surrounding. And that's why we need to say that even Professor Mondai from Makerere University said, the present is not its own explanation. The reason for African family breakdown, collapsing moral values, system, lack of respect, and violence and rape and corruptions, these are and many more lies in the distant past. And they are only can be observed when African people begin to have an introspection like we're doing in this program today. So Archbishop to represent that kind of challenge that we need to go back and deal with this aspect. Hence, he came up with the principles of Ubuntu, which are not in actual fact, are not his own, are part and parcel of our heritage. But we need to begin to go back to them so that we implement them and we to become a caring community.
Has the way in which our world and our lives have modernized, has it made it difficult to practice principles of Ubuntu? If one thinks about it today, just yesterday, on the show, we were having a conversation around gated communities and how more and more communities are wanting to put up restrictions to make sure that there's limited access into their areas, or at least there's controlled access, rather, into the areas where they stay. Of course, nowadays, it's becoming more and more commonplace for people to build walls around their houses in order to protect them. It's not uncommon or unusual to hear people who don't know their neighbors, who don't even talk to their neighbors.
Yes. This, of course, is part of what we're saying is that we have lost those principles that build us, because the better security is not building yourself around strong walls and all, or hiring securities to look after you. There is no way that we can protect ourselves by using physical protection. Martin Luther King used to say that it's no use carrying yourself a gun, believing that you're going to protect yourself. The better protection is in our heart and mind, where we begin to teach each other as human beings and become a caring community. You will see around here in South Africa. South Africa has become a security-conscious country. We use guns and we think that is going to protect us, but our people are dying like flies. And this is where we lost. That's why Steve Biko said we lost. That's where we lost our humanity. We need to begin to go back to apply those principles of Ubuntu, where we build a character that begin to make us believe in ourselves and begin to respect each other and begin to respect life.
Where would we begin, Reverend Sawane? Where would we begin with manifesting and practicing these principles of Ubuntu in the way that you say they live inherently in our hearts and in our minds?
Yeah. The uniqueness of bringing back Ubuntu lies in us cascading and infusing the key principles of Ubuntu, which has a potential to transform their mindset and behavior of the individual. And these are the key principles that Archbishop Tutu proposed. The human dignity, principle number 1, respect for life. 3, sharing. 4, compassionate, which is part of the unconditional love. Tolerance, group solidarity, conformity, collective unity, forgiveness, and reconciliation. These are core principles that we need to bring back to infuse the spirit of Ubuntu in all of us. And this will not come automatically. We need to begin in our families, Sis Cathy. We need to go back to our schools. You remember there were times in Africa when we had initiation schools. In the initiation schools, boys were taught these principles. They were part of the building blocks of character, where young people were taught how to respect their sisters, how to respect their mothers and women. And these were initiation schools that were part and parcel of our community. But the initiation schools are no longer there. Even those that are still here today, they are mostly, I'll say, are not really dealing with the core issues. They are mostly commercial and other things. But we need to go back to those principles. And of course, even the families, the African families of been completely destroyed. You'll remember during the time of apartheid, the fathers were working in the mines and the mothers were remaining alone in the families, building their families. And we lost all those basic principles, core principles of Ubuntu. And we need to go back. That's why I'm still propagating the fact that these modules of Ubuntu need to be part and parcel of the education syllabus, so that we begin to build those characters of our young people. You'll attest to the fact that even in the schools now, it has become part of the violent environment. For us to begin to harness and arrest this element, we need to go back to those structures.
All right, we're going to continue this conversation with Reverend Tawane in a moment. We'll also be joined by Seth Mazibuko, who is with the Moral Regeneration Movement. In what ways do you think that we collectively as a society can begin to inculcate these values of Ubuntu more and more in our daily lives, in the way we go about doing our business? I'd love to hear from you and your contributions to this conversation. It's time for the latest news headlines.
Thanks, Cathy. A very good morning. With the news headlines, Mudupi Makhalemele. The George municipality says police have officially taken over the investigation into the cause of the building collapse, which claimed the lives of 33 workers over a week ago. Parliament has passed the proposed law to officially end Eskom's 100-year electricity monopoly, and the IEC says today South African citizens are voting in only 9 countries in the Middle East. Details of these and other stories at 11.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 18 to the dollar, 23 rand 03 to the pound, and 19 rand 75 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mainly higher at the closing bell. The JSE has extended losses in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are weaker this hour. Gold is trading at $2,383. Platinum, $1,068 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $82.31 a barrel.
Are you exposed to weak, flat, downright embarrassing jokes? You know, from that one friend who insists he knows why the chicken crossed the road. Or that Danny who ends up laughing alone from a joke last heard when polyphonic ringtones ruled the world. Are you tired of answering the door to strange characters and objects in the world of knock knock? Those dad jokes that are like a fly with no legs? They just don't land. You don't have to suffer from unfunny jokes any longer. Tune in to Live at the Apollo Monday to Wednesday at 10 p.m. on S3 and give your lungs the laugh they deserve. Channel your inner comic with BBC Primetime, only on S3.
29 May, it's time to make your voice heard. Vote where you're registered. Bring your smart ID card, green barcoded ID, or temporary ID certificate for verification. Once you're checked in on the voters' roll, you'll be marked with ink and handed 3 stamped ballot papers for national, provincial, and regional votes. In the voting booth, mark your 3 ballot papers: national for political parties, provincial and regional for parties and independent candidates. Remember, 1 ballot, 1 mark. If you're visually impaired or have an unsteady hand, our officials are there to assist you with the universal ballot template to cast your vote. And don't forget, your vote is always a secret. So show up on 29 May. Voting stations open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Visit elections.org.za for more info. It's your democracy. Own it.
The Smiling One and the Red Devils have a mammoth task to demonstrate who will dance to the second leg of the final. This is the North African Derby. 4-time champions confront 11-time champions in the first leg of the Total Energies CAF Champions League final. Experience the jubilation of African football. Esperance Sportif de Tunis clashes with Al Ahly FC. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. This Saturday, 18 May at 8:45 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. In 2006, the Democratic Alliance won Cape Town by just 1 seat.
With just 42 votes, he recently won Umgeni,
bringing remarkable progress to rural KwaZulu-Natal.
Because people voted for change.
DA-run Midvaal is now the best-run municipality in Gauteng.
And a new story was written for the Western Cape when people voted DA.
But if you want a new government that works, then you have to vote for it.
In this election, every single vote will count. Your vote can rescue South Africa. Vote DA.
This political election broadcast was brought to you in terms of the CASA regulation governing the election period. The views expressed in this political election broadcast are those of the political party and not of the SABC.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Dumela Ausketi. On the issue of Ubuntu, I don't believe that we still have Ubuntu Ausketi because people are frustrated. We are frustrated because of the status quo. So you can't be kind when the system is not being kind to you. So kindness is a rare find. You will find, I think maybe now it's 1 in 1,000 people that still practice kindness because of the status quo, because of our political plight in this country. People are not kind. I mean, I feel like my mom ruined me for making me a kind person because I feel like it makes me weak because batho ba bapala ka wena if uli motho anang le pelo entle.
Morning, Cathy. This is Zanele in Durban. Oh, a great topic, Ubuntu. I think, Cathy, the Ubuntu is within a person. And I might say nowadays, Ubuntu has been overshadowed by the hunger. Through hungry stomach, people find themselves lost the sense of Ubuntu. Through hungry stomach, people find themselves has to fight for the bread and even betray the term Ubuntu. And Cathy, Ubuntu is lost. Is just lost. You can't even ask for a direction. The person will just mislead you that direction because of the loss of Ubuntu.
I think the Ubuntu has been lost throughout the years because if you can remember, previously we used to be beaten in school, but today you can't even beat a child. You beat a child, the child will beat you back. So you can't even instill the discipline, the respect. So today we are losing our integrity as human beings because we cannot enforce the principles, those that our parents before instilled in us. Thank you.
Shalom, Cathy. This is Wisdom from Ndwedwe. Yes, Ubuntu. I believe we all know that knowledge without practice is just useless. So where do we begin as we say immorality? Okay, that's where we begin. We go back where we got lost. Where we got lost, we're lost in touch with our Creator. I know I'm not talking about religion. Most of the time we confuse ourselves and debate concerning religion. I'm not talking about religion. I'm speaking about spirituality. That is what we have lost. And what has made us to lose spirituality is a system that we have put ourselves into. So how this system manifests itself, we have no time for ourselves and to practice spirituality so that we do reflections, we do introspection, what is happening in our heart, so that we deal with the things that are impurities. I think that is where we need to begin. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thank you for those contributions so far on why it is that as a society we've lost that essence of Ubuntu. Reverend Joseph Tawane is an author and a reverend, and of course he titled the book The Rainbow Nation, the Vision of the Beloved South African Community, much of it also drawing on the life and legacy of Desmond Tutu. And Seth Mazibuko is the COO of of the Moral Regeneration Movement. And Dr. Seth, good morning to you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to all your listeners. And I say hi to Reverend Chawane, and I'm humbled to be part of this conversation.
I imagine that the reason you would even have a movement that is called the Moral Regeneration Movement is it comes out of identifying a need in our society where there is a decline in a sense of morality. What would you describe as being some of the reasons for this sense of lack of Ubuntu? Because we speak about morality, but in Ubuntu are also principles of morality.
Cathy, it is very important that whenever we speak about Ubuntu, sometimes even the word itself is now abused. You will have Ubuntu securities, Ubuntu that. It has lost its weight. But from the perspective of moral regeneration, we are very clear that there are certain values that have got to be adhered to be able to even start talking Ubuntu. These also speak to how do you get to protect and promote, family and community values. That's your starting point. How families, do things, speak and act, and how does this translate to also community values? It is very important. Ubuntu is not something that can be said to be coming from outside in, but it starts from inside out, inside the family, those basic values of a family. Ubuntu also speaks, I heard one of your speakers, Ubuntu will find no room if people if we don't bring in what we decide to call an MRM, economic justice. Immediately when people are hungry, they lose Ubuntu. There must be a component of trying to improve the material well-being of people so that then people can be able, let me make an example. In the African context, when I come as a visitor coming from another area, come to stay in Berlin. When I get welcomed in that community, I will be welcomed, first of all, be fed, make it a point that I'm eating. And then sometimes be given a cow so that then that cow then two cows that can multiply. Now, it was that part of improving my material well-being. Then I can be somehow receptive of the values of Ubuntu. And one can even take it further and say, we need part of the core of Ubuntu is upholding honesty, integrity, and loyalty. We have lost that, Cathy. We've lost that as African people. We have lost honesty. We have lost integrity. We even take from the poor and even deprive the poor what they are supposed to be most of the time, what is supposed to protect them. Now, I'm a believer, Cathy, in this, that maybe even when we do talk Ubuntu, we need not, Ubuntu is not something that you talk about. Ubuntu is people, is a person, is also comes from Umntwana. You get that symbol, that MT, which makes you part of in the family and in the community. Let me take a pause and hear.
I think what you're saying is so important in the sense that if we don't have the collective good of the community at the heart of some of the things that we're doing, then we have in fact lost our essence of Ubuntu, because just the very idea, right, of people being amongst us, going to bed hungry, not having anything to eat. If we look historically at why Ubuntu was practiced, it was to also help communities alleviate some of the burden and the harshness of the societies and the environments that they were in.
Hello?
Yes, and so if we're to try and bring that back, how do we do that? That says, how do we do that?
Cathy, again, let me just take a step back a bit. You know, immediately when we started pronouncing a lot of what is a Western concept in this, what we call human rights, we even established Human Rights Commission, if you look at those rights that we pronounce, are so much rights without values. And they lack Ubuntu. And that to me is also an issue. The right to having access to food, for instance, you know, is taken as a right, not as a value. And now you've just mentioned this. Immediately when people get into not being able to even feed themselves, whether you're talking family or you're talking community, they immediately, Ubuntu and the values actually goes down the drain. Now, I think Ubuntu should not be seen as a flying saucer somewhere. Ubuntu is practical. Ubuntu is, even when in the traditional way, you know, Ubuntu is even how do we deal with issues of conflict in the community, in the family, and all that. And I'm sitting, I've just come out, I think your producer might have told you, we have just stolen me out of a summit on education, you know, and I can tell you, the message that I'm bringing even to the very summit is this, that our schools are what they are today, mainly because we've lost Ubuntu, we've lost the values enshrined in Ubuntu.
Reverend Tsawani, one of our listeners said, you can't be kind when the system is unkind.
Yes.
Unpack that for me, please, because I think that there is a point he's making. He's talking about the brutality that people are being put through on a day-to-day basis. Going to bed hungry is brutality that people are being subjected to. And he's saying that you're then expecting somebody who is experiencing what sometimes can be the worst of the system to turn around and be kind.
Yeah. I think the clip that you started with, it brings back to our history. The reason why we are where we are, Sis Cathy, is because of men like Archbishop Tutu. He came up with a theology, what I would call the theology of Ubuntu, which of course is a spiritual spirit of Ubuntu. In his struggle against the system of apartheid, he searched for a more inclusive human community. In that, to achieve that, he employed what I would call the tough-mindedness of a serpent to confront an evil system of apartheid. And he directed his energy to the human aggression towards the apartheid condition. But on the other hand, he applied what I would call the tender-heartedness of a dove. In this, I'm saying that Tutu was very tough-minded. He could confront the rulers of apartheid aggressively, but not using a weapon or a gun, but dealing with the mindset of the person. And in that, humanity changed a lot of human beings. It is not by when we speak about being tough-minded, we mean that you need to work very hard to change the mindset of the person by approaching that person and looking at him as a human being created in the image of the Creator. You will never win over. When we speak about leadership, we speak about people who are above the anger, because anger or aggression towards a human being will destroy everything. But we must direct our energy and aggressiveness to change the evil system. Being kind to a person who is very destructive helps you to win over that person, not to win over him, but to win him over, so that we can change the system. We are where we are, Cathy, because of human beings like Archbishop Tutu, who use the Bible, who use the Ubuntu principle to change the mindset and to transform the mind of the African people. That's what we mean. Now we are in the midst of voting in our countries. Political parties are now voting and they are using slogans and they are aggressively towards the other parties. We are not going to win that way. We need to come up with a system that helps us to win over those people who are our opponents, not by aggressively using the gun or physical force to change them, but we need to deal with the heart and change it to come towards our belief system.
Okay, so it's much deeper work than Reverend Sawan is what you're saying. It's much deeper work than what perhaps we give it credit for. I'm going to take a quick break and then I'm back with our guests. I'll also be taking your calls and comments on this conversation around Ubuntu and why it seems it's difficult to practice Ubuntu today, why we are seeing a decline of Ubuntu.
Getting more money into your pockets has never been this simple and exciting. With SABC's new Simple Watch and Win game show, you can get more Zaga in your pockets. Catch more Zaga every weekday on SABC 1 at 9 p.m. You could win your share of 50,000 Rand. All you have to do to win is give the correct answer for the day. Just dial *120 *33 to hash to register and play. The cost is R1.50 per minute. You could win big with more Zaga. Only on SABC 1. Any person aggrieved by any political advertisement or political election broadcast that is broadcast by SAFM may lodge a complaint within 5 days from broadcast with the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA. To lodge your complaint, please contact ICASA's Compliance Department via telephone number on 012 568 3233. That's 012 568 3233. Or email broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. That's broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. Alternatively, complaintsccc@icasa.org.za. That's complaintsccc@icasa.org.za.
The SABC Fortune Combo radio stations, which includes SAFM, Lotus FM, and Radio 2000, seek the services of a freelance graphic designer who will collaborate with cross-functional teams to create visually compelling assets that align with our receptive brand identities and resonate with our target audiences. The minimum requirements for the position are a bachelor's degree or diploma in graphic design, visual arts, or related field, 2 to 4 years proven experience as a graphic designer with a strong portfolio showcasing a range of design projects. All interested candidates should submit their CVs and portfolio of evidence to vacancy@safm.co.za. Application closed on the 26th of May 2024. For more detailed info, visit www.safm.co.za or follow us on our social media pages at SAFM Radio.
SAFM, leading the conversation.
The Smiling One and the Red Devils have a mammoth task to demonstrate who will dance to the second leg of the final. This is the North African Derby. 4-time champions confront 11-time champions in the first leg of the Total Energies CAF Champions League final. Experience the jubilation of African football. Esperance Sportif de Tunis clashes with Al Ahly FC live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 this Saturday, 18 May at 8:45 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Mama Kitty, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megaliters of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand Water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they've encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand Water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand Water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand Water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand Water beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
29 May, it's time to make your voice heard. Vote where you're registered. Bring your smart ID card, green barcoded ID, or temporary ID certificate for verification. Once you're checked in on the voters' roll, you'll be marked with ink and handed 3 stamped ballot papers for national, provincial, and regional votes. In the voting booth, mark your 3 ballot papers: national for political parties, provincial and regional for parties and independent candidates. Remember, 1 ballot, 1 mark. If you're visually impaired or have an unsteady hand, our officials are there to assist you with the universal ballot template to cast your vote. And don't forget, your vote is always a secret. So show up on 29 May. Voting stations open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Visit elections.org.za for more info. It's your democracy. Own it.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the talking point. As you can tell, we seem to be completely out of time. JJ, you're in Polokwane. Let me just take your thoughts quickly on this conversation around Ubuntu.
Cathy, thank you very much. And let me start by indicating that last time when you were hosting Prof. Musuma and Father Smangaliso Mkhacho, I started by this statement by Hendrik Verwoerd. The person who can eradicate the effect and impact of Bantu education will be a genius. I started by that, and I blamed it on Prof. Musuma and Father Smangaliso Mkhacho then. But today I heard Mufundis Chawan. He has indicated exactly where the problem started. He has indicated that we have left the track of our own school, that is the manhood school, Koma, Angomin, Amatal. And that's where our Ubuntu were molded. And I think if we don't go back to that, and how do we go back to that? We must start writing books that are in line with our Ubuntu and moral standards. Because the Bantu education was meant to destroy us, and it has successfully done so. You teach the people in class locusts, frogs, and all those type of things. And when they get out, what do they think about? Nothing. It will be thinking of those. And they will keep on thinking of those until they die. And on that, I indicated that we need to bring new books that will assist us to help the coming generation, not ourselves, who have been taught locusts and frogs.
All right.
And, I blame it on the professors, especially the African professors, who have tended to be political analysts instead of dealing with the issues of education.
All right, JJ, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you for that contribution this morning. To our guests, we are completely out of time. Maybe as we wrap up, I'll give each of you 30 seconds to give us just your concluding remarks. Reverend Tawani, let me kick it off with you.
Yeah. With the philosophy that we're dealing with today, the philosophy of Ubuntu, Archbishop Tutu, on his fight against apartheid, he chose a method that attacks the forces of evil rather than a person who happens to do the evil. What I'm saying is that for us to go back and restore the spirit of Ubuntu, we need to go back to our families, to our schools, so that to inculcate and cascade those principles to our children. We may have lost hope to the adult world, but our young people, we've got hope to our young people that we can restore this spirit of Ubuntu and bring back a caring South African and beloved community.
All right, and Tate Seth?
Mine is simple. Ubuntu should be the starting point, enhancing sound family and community values. Take immediately, whether spiritual or physical, that is the core. That immediately when we enhance sound and family and community values, we shall have started in practicing also and improving material conditions of people and the well-being. Then, by that, we shall be ensuring harmony, and Ubuntu will then jump in.
All right. Let me thank you all for your contributions to our conversation. It's time for the latest news.
Thanks, Cathy. The top stories: police raid a refugee center in Pretoria, and Junior Phalane's funeral service underway. Very good morning. Search and seizure operations are currently underway at the Desmond Tutu Refugee Center in Marabastad in Pretoria. This after a whistleblower tipped off Home Affairs to alleged unlawful activities occurring at the center, where officials are being bribed to issue fraudulent documents to unregistered foreign nationals. The department, in partnership with the SIU and the Hawks, have acquired a search warrant to search the premises of 5 refugee centers around the country. Home Affairs Minister Aaron Motsoaledi.
After the advent of Pastor Bushiri, who, as you know, had got a fraudulent permanent residence document, I received a petition from people who are working with permitting to say the counter-corruption unit must stop investigating their errors. I approached the head of the SIU. I took him to the whistleblower and he listened. He said, this is big and we need to come in.
The NCOP has passed the proposed law to officially end Eskom's 100-year electricity monopoly. The Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill will formalize measures to open up the market for competitive electricity trading. The bill, once signed into law, will ensure greater participation of the private sector in electricity generation. However, the power utility will maintain its exclusive control of the transmission business. Energy analyst Samson Mampwedi.
Going forward with this bill having passed, what we will see now is that there won't be that much of steep increase in prices because there will be competition in the market. There will be independent power producers who will be producing electricity for much cheaper than what Eskom may want to be selling to the transmission system operator. That kind of competition is necessary for the country so that we can have lower electricity prices going forward.
The George municipality says police have officially taken over the investigation into the cause of the building collapse, which claimed the lives of 33 workers over a week ago. Spokesperson Chantel Edwards says they will, in the course of the day, cease their search and rescue operations at the site.
The public is advised that official investigations into the incident are being undertaken by SAP's Department of Labour, Department of Infrastructure, and an independent structural engineering firm appointed by the Western Cape Government. Speculation on possible causes by unofficial experts could impact negatively on the official investigation. The public is requested to refrain from spreading malicious rumours and/or fake news.
The funeral service of 5-year-old Ditebogo Junior Palane is currently underway at the Kopanong Community Hall in Soshanguve, north of Pretoria. Ditebogo was shot and killed when a group of armed men hijacked his father at his home last week. Nontantlan Jingila reports.
The mood is somber at the funeral service as tributes keep pouring in for Ditebogo Jr., who was named after his father, Ditebogo Sr. People have gathered at the Kopanong Hall in Soshanguve to pay their respects, including family, friends, and other dignitaries are attending the funeral. For SABC News, Nontantla Njingila, Soshanguve.
And in election news, the IEC says that today South African citizens are voting in only 9 countries in the Middle East. The rest of the other missions will head to the polls tomorrow. The Commission saw a record number of registered voters overseas who applied to cast special votes at under 77,000. Deputy Chief Electoral Officer Masego Shiburi says immediately after the closing of the voting stations, the ballots will be transported back to South Africa for counting.
In the majority today will be countries in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and those countries. 9 missions will vote today. However, we can also confirm that votes have already been cast in Wellington, in New Zealand, in Canberra, Australia, Singapore, and Bangkok. And those missions will operate the 17th and again on the 18th, which is a Saturday. The rest of the territories will vote on Saturday, the 18th.
The top story at 11 o'clock, search and seizure operations are currently underway at the Desmond Tutu Refugee Center in Marabastad in Pretoria. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
I'm one of the people who have seen comrades dying, both inside the country and outside the country, in the struggle against the regime of terror in Pretoria. I know the names, I know the faces. I know how these young people put aside everything in life to concentrate in the fight against white domination. And I said to myself,
Nisibani sethu maqhawe yaseazania ukufa kwenu akusoze kulityalwe ukufa kwenu kuya kukhanyisa indlela yabo bonke abaphansi kwencindezelo Nisibani sethu maqhawe yaseazania ukufa kwenu akusoze kulityalwe ukufa kwenu kuya kukhanyisa indlela yabo bonke abaphansi kwencindezelo awusiyo kozevota izibhamu siqonde phambili ngaso sonke isikhathi nibe isibani sethu maqhawe awusiyo kozevota izibhamu siqonde phambili ngaso sonke isikhathi nibe isibani sethu maqhawe ngaphandle kwezibhamu nawanathule empini ngaphambi kwezinhlamvu zesitha anizange niphelelwe ithemba lapho khona nathi phambili ngenguquleko kwezibhamu nawanathule empini ngaphambi kwezinhlamvu zezitha anizange niphelelwe ithemba lapho khona nathi phambili ngenguquleko awusiyo zebotha izibhamu ziqonde phambili ngaso sonke isikhathi nibe isibani sethu maqhawe awusiyo zebotha izibhamu ziqonde phambili ngaso sonke isikhathi nibe isibani sethu maqhawe ekuseni ngo-7
iyakha ishaya ngo-7
sithi ekuseni ngo-7
iyakha ishaya
bayakhala abazali okhonolana ngo-7
iyakha ishaya
bayakhala abazali okhonolana ngo-7
iyakha ishaya
ingobi yazani yangeyetho sithi yonke iyakha ishaya ngobi yazani yangeyetho sithi yonke iyakha ishaya bayakhala abazali okhonolana ngo-7
iyakha ishaya
bayakhala abazali okhonolana ngo-7
iyakha ishaya ngo-7
azani yangeyetho sithi yonke iyakha ishaya uyazani yangeyetho sithi yonke iyakha ishaya bayakhala abazali okhonolani ngo-7
iyakha ishaya
bayakhala abazali okhonolani ngo-7
iyakha ishaya
obiyazani yangeyetho sithi yonke iyakha ishaya obiyazani yangeyetho sithi yonke iyakha ishaya bayakhala abazali okhonolani ngo-7 bayakhala abazali okhonolani ngo-7 ngobi azani yangeyetho sithi yonke iyakha ishaya ngobi azani yangeyetho sithi yonke iyakha ishaya ngo-7.
And that is titled Azania by Ipupo Likabiko. And joining us today is a vocalist from the group, Pulane Mafatse, who is, of course, part of this beautiful ensemble that has been making waves. And, of course, they're also said to be some of the acts that you can expect later on in the year at the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz Festival. Pulane, good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Good morning, Pulane. All right, it looks like we've lost Pulane Mafatse there on the line, and we're looking forward to the conversation with Iphupho Likabiko. Let's take a quick break. We're back with more of her and, of course, the group as a whole, but also their music.
Who would have thought that a cancelled flight could lead to an unlikely night of drunken airport cloth between strangers? The priceless look on their faces when they discover that they took the term love your neighbor seriously? Okay. Some may describe it as a sexy, messy comedy drama about morality, monogamy, and everything in between. But we call it Cheaters. Catch Cheaters, Monday to Wednesday from the 15th of May at 9 p.m. only on S3. Channel your best comedy with BBC Primetime only on S3. Open up.
29 May, it's time to make your voice heard. Vote where you're registered. Bring your smart ID card, green barcoded ID, or temporary ID certificate for verification. Once you're checked in on the voters' roll, you'll be marked with ink and handed 3 stamped ballot papers for national, provincial, and regional votes. In the voting booth, mark your 3 ballot papers: national for political parties, provincial and regional for parties and independent candidates. Remember, 1 ballot, 1 mark. If you're visually impaired or have an unsteady hand, our officials are there to assist you with the universal ballot template to cast your vote. And don't forget, your vote is always a secret. So show up on 29 May. Voting stations open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Visit elections.org.za for more info. It's your democracy. Own it.
The Royal Club want to deliver a top-of-the-range style of football to impress their fans on home ground. However, the Orange Boys want to add to their 2-1 lead and rule Cairo for the duration of the match. This is the second leg of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup final. Do not miss out on the North African derby, Zamalek Sporting Club versus RSP Bekane FC, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. This Sunday, 19 May at 18:45. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Friday Wind Down. Kick off your weekend the right way.
All right, we continue the conversation on the talking point. Our Friday wind down guest, Iphupho Likabiko. Pulane Mafatse is a vocalist, one of the vocalists of the group, joins us now. Pulane, good morning. I hope that the connection is better.
Yes, I don't know why it's sabotaging us, this thing, but morning, Cathy. So lovely to be here to chat to you. Good morning, South Africa.
You know, I mean, it's quite beautiful to see the way in which you as a group have carved out this very distinct identity for yourselves, right? So I see with some of the articles that have been written about you, you're described as an Africanist group, but clearly with quite a very deep political and social influence in terms of the music that you're making and the message that you're putting into your music. Where does that come from?
I think for me, the way that I see it is, as Black people living in Africa and South Africa, it's impossible to not think about our lives in conjunction with resistance, right? If you think of our history, where we come from, and if you think about the present, the inequalities that kind of still mar our societies to date, it becomes then difficult to separate the political consciousness or the Black consciousness outside of our experience as a result, outside of our expression. So I think that's where that stems from. But to be more direct, Ipupogabiko finds breath or comes into materializes in the physical realm just after the Fees Must Fall movement, right? Most of us met in that kind of hustle and bustle, and I think the consciousness of that time influenced how we think about society, how we think about the world, as well as our positions in the world. So I think that's kind of like the thinking that influences this, I wouldn't call it hyper, but political consciousness, or this sense of resistance or speaking truth to systems and powers that seek to constantly oppress us.
Bulani, that might be a good place for us to build on this conversation.
Yeah.
So tell us more about that time. Tell us more about how you all got together as a group.
So we meet in different places, but I think at the very inception, Unhlanhla, the band leader, started this band when he was still at Wits with some of the other band members being his classmates. So obviously, as they not even at Wits, in South Africa, there was the whole Fees issues happening in 2015, and then the band then sort of finds breath and shape in that context. I know I met Unhlanhla at he was sessioning for another band I was playing with, and then we met there. But like there was a connection of saying, "Oh no, you are also running up and down asking for free education." So that thing kind of like that like-mindedness kind of influenced the getting together. Furthermore, I know with other band members we've met in music circles, and I think for us it's the way that we come together is almost organic, right? In the sense that there were no auditions held or particular thing. It's just a matter of meeting people and being one in mind, one in heart, one in spirit, and then communing through breaking bread. So we share a lot of food together, as well as making music and kind of expressing ourselves in that fashion.
So I guess at the heart of it, you are a group of artists, musicians that really get along and enjoy music, making music together. And it just so happens that you're also in this setup of a group.
Yeah, I think at a basic level, yes. But I think, I don't know, maybe other band members can interject here, but I think there is some kind of supernatural force that brings us together, because even in the music there's this very strong theme of spirituality that happens. So for me, I can't sit here and just say, no, it's only that organic thing, right? There's a bit of a sense inside of me that kind of feels like we were kind of placed by God and the powers that be to be in this moment, in this particular way, at this particular time.
So let's talk about the name Ipupo Ligabiko, because I think that name also, now that you have explained the context under which you all met, it begins to make sense, because it was during that wave of Fees Must Fall protest that the voices of people like Steve Biko were being branded by students and saying that, we represent the voice of Biko. We want the dream of Biko for our lives to be realized.
Yeah. So Ipupo Gabiko, the translation of Pupo is a Xhosa term for dreams, right? And we think of that as God as the giver of dreams, right? And then Ubiko represents kind of black consciousness or the black radical thought. So we merge those kind of ideas together to say that God is the giver of dreams. We want to see kind of like the dream of Biko being actualized in our time.
Absolutely profound. Did you find that you had to think a lot about it before you got to this point of saying that this is our identity as a group? Because again, of course, they in the music industry there is a lot of typecasting, right? And so immediately by having that kind of a name, by having that kind of a position, you could well be opening or closing certain doors for yourselves.
Yeah, well, so I'll be very honest. The thinking, right, behind the band truly is something that also we suckle from our band leader, right? Because I think the vision is his, right? And I think it's neither here nor there about like what the representation, what our representation kind of aligns us with or puts us away from, right? Because I think at the end of the day, as artists, we are given kind of visions or dreams, or we are given artistic or creative influences or inferences, and then our duty is to express that and share it with the world. And I think, in as far as that is concerned, that kind of identity stems from there. But then coming to us as individuals who then engage with this thing on a personal level, I would say that our personal lives and our experiences as Black young people in South Africa not only force us but compel us to be part of such a movement where even when history and time asks us the questions later, we can say that this is the contribution that we've made towards the liberation of Black people.
We continue our conversation with Pulane Mafatsi. She's a vocalist for the South African contemporary jazz band Iphupho Likabiko. We'll continue with this conversation in a moment.
29 May, it's time to make your voice heard. Vote where you're registered. Bring your smart ID card, green barcoded ID, or temporary ID certificate for verification. Once you're checked in on the voters' roll, you'll be marked with ink and handed 3 stamped ballot papers for national, provincial, and regional votes. In the voting booth, mark your 3 ballot papers: national for political parties, provincial and regional for parties and independent candidates. Remember, 1 ballot, 1 mark. If you're visually impaired or have an unsteady hand, our officials are there to assist you with the universal ballot template to cast your vote. And don't forget, your vote is always a secret. So show up on 29 May. Voting stations open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Visit elections.org.za for more info. It's your democracy. Own it.
Are you blowing your paycheck on car insurance every month? Monica, 39 from 3 Rivers, pays just 1,515 Rand a month for her 2018 BMW 320i.
None of the insurance companies has come near to the price I'm paying. I am happy at insurance. I'm going nowhere.
SMS out to 30754 now for a quick quote that could save you hundreds every month. You'll also find out about included benefits like panic assistance and help it out 24-hour roadside assistance. Yusuf, 45 from Tegadal, pays just 700 Rand a month for his 2021 VW Polo.
Help it out. Took the family up to go and see the snow and I got stuck. The service was quick, even though it was in a very remote area. Absolutely phenomenal service from our insurance.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Things are really heating up in the Tastemaster kitchen this week as we enter our first elimination challenge.
This week, we celebrate our African pride and see who will rise to the occasion.
10 minutes left and I'm still doing my curd.
Things can go wrong very quickly.
What I'm doing to try and finish on time is pray.
Join us 7 p.m. on SABC2 every Tuesday.
Repeats on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. and Sundays at 4 p.m.
See you there.
Celebrating our music heritage right here on the Friday Wind Down.
Good morning. With the news headlines, Ke Mudupi Makhalemele. The SIU is conducting search and seizure operations at the Desmond Tutu Refugee Center in Marabastad in Pretoria. The George municipality says it'll cease their search and rescue operations during the course of the day at the site where a building collapsed over a week ago. And the Eastern Cape Health Department has raised concerns about the high levels of violence at hospitals in the province. A full news update coming up at noon.
The human papillomavirus, or HPV, is a very common virus that affects all genders. Around 8 out of 10 people will get the HPV infection at some point in their lives. Most people with HPV do not know that they have the infection. HPV can cause cervical and other cancers, but here's the good news. HPV vaccination can prevent more than 90% of these cancers. The HPV vaccine is recommended early, starting from age 9. Protect what matters to you for a future free from HPV-related cancers. Speak to your pharmacist or clinic sister about HPV vaccination. This message was brought to you by MSD.
The SABC Fortune Combo radio stations, which includes SAFM, Lotus FM, and Radio 2000, seek the services of a freelance graphic designer who will collaborate with cross-functional teams to create visually compelling assets that align with our receptive brand identities and resonate with our target audiences. The minimum requirements for the position are a bachelor's degree or diploma in graphic design, visual arts, or related field, 2 to 4 years proven experience as a graphic designer with a strong portfolio showcasing a range of design projects. All interested candidates should submit their CVs and portfolio of evidence to vacancy@safm.co.za. Application close on the 26th of May 2024. For more detailed info, visit www.safm.co.za or follow us on our social media pages at SAFM Radio.
SAFM, leading the conversation.
The Friday Wind Down. Kick off your weekend the right way.
It's the Friday Wind Down. We're in conversation with Pulane Mafatsi. She's a vocalist in the contemporary jazz band Ipupo Ligabiko, and we're talking about the music that this ensemble has been putting together. And you know, You must be so excited, Pulane, about the fact that you're going to be featured in the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz this year, which is going to be quite a showcase. Looking at the unveiling or the reveal that was done earlier on in the week.
Yeah, listen, I'm personally over the moon, and I think we can think of it as a milestone to the band at large. And I also think it's going to be interesting to have us perform for an audience that is actually there for jazz, because the genre that we express ourselves in isn't jazz music, and usually our music finds expression in other places where you wouldn't think of the audience as particularly a jazz audience, but it still resonates there. So I'm personally interested to see how the jazz audience responds to our offer.
When you make music, I mean, it's quite clear. Like if I listen to, if I look at the title of the song that we played just before news, Bram Streets. Anybody who says Bram Streets locates themselves within a particular age group for a particular audience. And how do you balance that? Because you're all still young people on this journey of their careers, but like you're saying, you're in a space that is quite niche, and you know people have very different tastes, and I think with jazz artists are held to a different, and if I'm not being completely unfair, a very high standard.
Yeah, you know, and I think that's their thing, because when I think about the role of the artist, right, it's to reflect the times, as Nina Simone puts it, right, so beautifully for us. And I think that's one of the quotes that we really, really embody when we think of our creative process. Brahms is a place for young people in South Africa where their youth is child, you know, without adding a better way to put it. And I think for us, we do find ourselves in meeting each other. Braam became that space where we meet with other artists, we meet with one another, and we really just grow and bask in this youthfulness, right? That we kind of embody as an ensemble. Others can think of Braam as like a lower standard place or a place in the margin, but I think that's where the people are. That's where the young people are. That's where the young people that are constantly fighting with NASFAS, right? The young people that are fighting for fees, the young people that are the first graduates in Makaya, the young people that are seeking a better future, right? The young people that are us, so there's no, for me personally, there's no sense of wanting to divorce myself from that truth and that history and that narrative, because it's something that deeply belongs and also shapes how we become as a band, but even more so as individuals that have walked the streets of Braam, that have felt the rest of being misplaced in the city, right? That have found expression, that have lost in youthfulness in that moment of being in Braam. So yeah, that's my response to that kind of thing.
Tell me more about the Amanzi sessions. What was behind the Amanzi sessions? What have you been aiming to do through these sessions?
So Amanzi session comes to rise. It's a response, the way that I see it. It's a response that IPUP was making towards the I don't know if I can call it the pandemic, but a response to the social ill of substance abuse, right? What we tend to do as artists that, not even as artists, as Black people, some in the middle class and the higher class, but we tend to look at substance abuse as a problem for poor Black people, right? And we don't see ourselves as part of the problem. We don't see ourselves as suffering from that kind of problem. So I think Ipupo Gabiko is going through a reflective moment, right, an introspective moment, and Amanzi session is helping us think through those sort of issues amongst ourselves. So on a basic level, Amanzi sessions are just sessions where Ipupo, at the moment, the subject matter that is really, really at the core of it is speaking about alcoholism, if I can call that, or alcohol abuse, the structural kind of influence of alcohol, how it works in the economy, and how we can think about all of these things and also see how it affects us, right? It's to give young people an opportunity to introspect and reflect, right, about the substance abuse issue. But furthermore, as an individual, the way that I see Amanzi session as a platform for artists to collaborate, for Black people to think. I think of it as, I know in Makaya we grew up cinema home style, right, where people would meet on a weekly basis to speak about whatever's happening in the situation. I think even in the past or even in the present, old people organize themselves somehow. Society. There's these institutions that are not necessarily formal that create community that Black people find themselves in, that I think that sort of space was missing in the Black youth of South Africa. We never had that space. So I think Amanzi session is a platform to create that type of space where we can play with the arts, but furthermore think about the society that we live in and sort of imagine ways in which we can see ourselves in the future.
Yeah, Pulani, there's so many layers to what you as a group do and what you aim to do in through the music that you're putting together. So less talking from you and I, Pulani, more of the music. And that's what it's about today. So I'm going to bring you more of the music by Ipupo Likabiko, and this is is one of their songs, Uthixo Ukhona.
Joblessness figures hit a record high.
Too long have we tolerated corruption in jobs and jobs for favors. How long are we going to be living like this, existing without the land? Vuka, vela, voda. Why have we normalized complaining about the dark? In the dark. They promised us free education in 1994. 30 years later, all they delivered is a corrupt NSFAS and a broken education system. On May 29th, Election Day, vote EFF.
You must make sure that you are one of the people who are going to deliver economic freedom in our lifetime.
This political election broadcast was brought to you in terms of the CASA regulation governing the election period. The views expressed in this political election broadcast are those of the political party and not of the SABC.
The Friday Wind Down. Kick off your weekend the right way.
Kamata kiba ubana baho nisapula obavulele tsela o aine pula kamata kiba ubana baho nisapula obavulele tsela aine pula kamata kiba ubana baho nisapula obavulele tsela o kamata kiba ubana baho nisapula obavulele tsela ayine pula kiba ubana baho nisapula obavulele tsela ayine pula kamata kiba ubana baho nisapula obavulele tsela ayine pula kamata kiba ubana baho nisapula obavulele tsela o kamata kiba ubana baho nisapula obavulele tsela ayine pula
And those are the beautiful sounds of Iphupho Likabiko, the South African jazz group that were profiling for the wind down. Today, Bulani Mafatse is a vocalist in the group. So, Bulani, you're all so different as group members. You have other interests as well. How do you
100%.
find synergy between all of you? Because it is also quite a big group.
Yeah, it's blood. That's why I said earlier on, outside of like, without being like superficial, but there is like a supernatural force that kind of binds us together. But furthermore, we're all artists, right? So I think, and on that level, we're able to connect and we're able to propel. But also in the band, there's like circles that we find ourselves in that are outside of the band that we commune in. So I know, for example, in the vocal section, some of the other vocalists are also drama majors, right? Just like me. So we're able to meet when we go to the theater, or if someone is doing a theatrical project, we're able to assist each other in that kind of accord. And I know the whole section, they also have other communities, right, that they meet each other with, and also the politics, right? And I think the political consciousness that we kind of embody as individuals, right, kind of does also add extra vuma with us getting along and us connecting, because we can converse and engage in a deep way for long periods. And I think it's what brings us together.
And do you find that in the process of making music, you're able to have common ground quickly and make decisions quickly about what a particular song needs to be, or if you're working on a project, what the focus of that project has to be? Again, because you are all artists, and you know you are also different in your own rights.
I think in the first that is concerned, you know, there is we have an understanding of what the vision is, right? And I think at times when you firstly we as an ensemble allow ourselves to be led by our composer and arranger, because we are in agreement with what he's saying, right? So I think that the sense of allowing to be led really allows things to go smoothly. But furthermore, because we are connected, we arrive at similar places, you know. So there's very little contestation with decision making, and also we've been together for quite some time. So we are there is some sort of synergy. There is a sense of being in sync with one another, whereas one will think something and another will complete the thought. So I think we owe that to time and also to character, and as well as understanding what the purpose of the band actually is fundamentally.
And let's talk then about the future. I mentioned earlier that you're going to be part of the lineup for the Joy of Jazz Festival later on in the year. But before we get there, there's of course still plenty that you might be up to. Here's your opportunity to tell our listeners about it.
So on the 6th of June, we've got a performance at Black Habone, a very big venue in Pretoria. If you can, check out their pages, check out our page, and then show up. On the 9th of June, we've got Swetchity at the gig at the Embo Festival. And then there's Joy of Jazz, obviously, in September. And then they might or might not show some face Eswatini. But also, most importantly, we're definitely going to be doing next month, every month, once a month. We're going to have Amanzi sessions on a Monday. Please follow us on social media pages, Instagram, Twitter, Iphupho Likabiko, and Facebook, Iphupho Likabiko. Just follow our journeys there, and then all the other updates and details in as far as our shows, our performances, as they come, will be posted. Let's engage, let's talk, you know, share opinions on the music, share the music on your pages, you know. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Pulani, thank you so much for coming on to the show and for sharing your experience and your journey as a group. It's been great hearing from you. And of course, also your music. Well, on that note, I think it's safe to say that it brings us to the end of the talking point for this week. What a week it has been. And next week, of course, you can expect the tempo to go up just a notch, because we will then be about a week away from the country's election. So this could well be part of the calm before the storm that is awaiting us. I trust that you will have a lovely weekend ahead. If you're out on the roads, please take care, drive safely, and we will be back with each other again Monday between 9 and midday. I'm going to leave you with the lovely sounds of Ipupo Liga Biko.
Singabakho qamatha, singabakho mvelinqangi, singabakho somandla uzosikhusele bawo. Singabakho qamatha, singabakho mvelinqangi, singabakho somandla uzosikhusele bawo. Uzosikhusele bawo. Uzosikhusele bawo, uzosikhusele bawo, uzosikhusele bawo, uzosikhusele bawo, uzosikhusele bawo, uzosikhusele bawo, uzosikhusele bawo. Singabakho qamatha, singabakho mvelinqangi, singabakho somandla uzosikhusele bawo. Singabakho qamatha, singabakho mvelinqangi, singabakho somandla uzosikhusele bawo.
12 o'clock on Friday, the 17th of May 2024. A very warm welcome to Updated Noon here on SAFM. Leading the conversation, I'm Sakina Kamwendo. Coming up in the next hour.
If you are a legitimate asylum seeker, why do you pay a bribe? You are helping thuggery. I know people will say, no, they are forced to because there's inefficiency and all that.
The SIU has raided Home Affairs refugee centres across the country and...
Mr. President, members of the court, South Africa is not interested in the truth, nor is it interested in law or justice.
Israel responding to South Africa's ICJ appeal for the Rafah attack halt. Coming up in sport.
Look ahead to football coming up today. Some money figures to be given to you from a magazine. And the Lions and the Bulls have announced their teams for the URC today.
Well, that's how you will depress us into the weekend with those money figures. But yeah, John Chirika with those details later on in the show. We always want to hear from you, so please write to us via SMS on 41391, or you can write to us via X or Facebook at SABC News _radio, or using the hashtag update at noon. If you want to send us a voice note, that number 082-692-3909. Well, these and more stories coming up on this Friday edition of Updated Noon. First, though, here's the latest news with Mudupi Mohlahlana.
Thank you very much, SK. The top stories this hour: all bodies accounted for in the George building disaster and the SIU raiding refugee centres. A very good afternoon. Western Cape Local Government Minister Anton Bredell says all bodies have been accounted for and the final death toll is 33 in the George building tragedy. He says police will officially begin their probe into the incident today. Bredell says while the tragedy has affected many people, they are relieved that everyone is accounted for.
Search and rescue is completed. I was very pleased this morning to report to the Premier, and also thank you to the Premier for his leadership during this event or disaster. We've unfortunately, as you know, 33 fatalities. 29 people still in hospital or alive, so 10 of those are still in hospital. The search and rescue teams have done brilliant work there.
The SIU is conducting search and seizure operations at several refugee centers around the country. A whistleblower tipped off Home Affairs to alleged unlawful activities occurring at the centers where officials are being bribed to issue fraudulent documents to unregistered foreign nationals. The department has acquired a warrant to search the premises of 5 refugee centers. The search is currently underway and electronic devices like cell phones and laptops are being confiscated. Home Affairs Minister Aaron Motsoaledi.
After the advent of Pastor Bushiri, who, as you know, had got a fraudulent permanent residence document, I received a petition from people who are working with permitting to say the counter-corruption unit must stop investigating their errors. I approached the head of the SIU. I took him to the whistleblower and he listened. He said, this is big and we need to come in.
The Eastern Cape Health Department has raised concerns about the high levels of violence at hospitals in the province. Healthcare workers say they fear for their own lives as they are threatened when they treat patients. They also say that they are affected mentally and physically as they battle to deal with the constant flow of patients brought in with bullet wounds and other violence-induced traumas. The department's Dr. Mthandeki Kamlashe says the situation is unbearable.
As a department, it's really causing an unpalatable situation. You don't want to be treated by an anxious health worker. You don't want to be treated by an emotionally disturbed nurse. That's not good for any patient. So we are really disturbed and concerned. Also, there is also a threat to their own physical well-being because these violent activities even spill over into our facilities. This affects both public, by the way, and private practitioners in the province and perhaps elsewhere in the country.
The rand has strengthened against the greenback, hovering around a 5-month high ahead of S&P Global's review of the country's sovereign credit rating later today. The local currency has rallied this week amid an improvement in risk sentiment as bets grow that the U.S. Federal Reserve may cut interest rates in September. It's currently trading at 18.16 to the dollar.